During COVID lockdown, an ab man sat in his Melbourne garage and for 2 weeks he watched his mate look for a bolt. 5 years later, and at $1.6 million per car, this is what they built. I'm Glenn Ridge, the man with the bolt story is John Zeigler, and we're about to find out a whole heap more about the Zeigler Bailey 4.4. Now John, we're sitting on the Mornington Peninsula here, a beautiful $1.6 million EB behind us. How did it get to this stage?
Well, Glenn, it's been a pretty incredible 5-year journey now. You know, wonderful life experience, doing something that's quite significant. It's only one car behind us, but obviously the plan is to have a much bigger collection of production of cars. But, you know, I often find it's hard to sort of figure that at the end of one's career, how do you start creating Australia's newest OEM? And some of those seeds of story really come from early days of my father, you know, having a Harley Davidson in the backyard leaning against the fence with all this other equipment and him telling me he was going to build a gyrocopter to fly to work. So as a child growing up in that environment where you could create anything, it was never a challenge to start creating something. So really, this has been a journey of creating something that we think is significant as an automobile itself, and significant, we think, for the country as we move production into a very marketing-focused, specialised area, as opposed to mass-produced product, you know, trying to sell at the cheapest price around the world. We've really entered a category with a car that's very specialist, very unique, competitive advantage, and we hope that it's going to be successful so I can spend a little bit more time in Mornington Peninsula.
I've got to ask the story about the Bolt. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Greg and I both had fathers who were very automotive focused, and we can both remember our fathers racing around looking for the Bolt to finish the job. And in my case, you know, I used to be doing the VACC form and Dad was teaching me how you record the hours you spent. And I'd say, but Dad, you were looking for the Bolt for 3 hours. What do I charge that out at? And he'd say, no, I can't charge for that. Just put it down as nothing. And as a very young kind of man, I was learning lessons of you don't charge for your time, how do you stay in business? And we had arguments about that. But Greg's father, the same, looking for a Bolt stopped a whole process from happening. So you end up with half-produced items sitting on the shelf. You end up with incomplete projects and others starting. So you don't have a system that can produce something repeatably, reliably, and consistently, and have an output. And as we started this journey, that was a big part of what we wanted to create. A business with a very, very focused approach, as opposed to a hot rodder's dream or backyard looking for the Bolt scenario.
ZB number 2, sitting behind us. Why Porsche?
Why Porsche? Well, my first sort of love of Porsche came, I was just sort of in the process of building a 1933 Dodge. Dodges versus Fords had a wooden frame with steel wrapped around them in those days. So instead of all the guys who'd picked Fords being able to weld their bodies back to the new frame that had rusted out, I had to go to cabinet makers and have to use KD hardwood to try and fit it back into the frame to create this 33 Dodge. Anyway, I got it nearly finished in 3,500 hours. Ended up selling it to put an extension on the back of my house. It was early days. I'd bought a house and kind of broke my heart and thought, never going to do that again. And at the time, I just happened to watch a movie called King of the Mountain. And there was this magnificent 356 with wide wheels, fastest car down the mountain. It beat everything else. So that was an early lesson that kind of made me fall in love with just the Porsche genre. So yeah, love of Porsches. Porsche is a great brand. It's probably the best brand and sort of design that's ever existed. So yeah, it sort of goes to the heart, I think.
Although we say Porsche, there's minimal Porsche in it though. Why did you decide to rebuild a car which many people thought was perfect?
Well, we started off initially during COVID, and we thought, let's build an Aussie Singer. And we really respect what Singer have done. And in the journey of looking at Singer, we thought, great, let's build an Aussie version. And let's call it a Zinger, just to be something different. Well, one of the fast food chains kind of preempted us on that and called their Zinger Burger. And we're thinking, can't call a car a burger. But it was an omen, perhaps, because at the end of the journey, we created a version of the Singer in Oz. And we looked at the car and we went, it's nice. It's just like Singer. It's an improvement. It's a restoration, a resto mod. But there was something in both Greg and I that sort of said, is it really a purpose in life to go and create something that looks a bit better than a Porsche? And being really, really sort of Porsche orientated people and respecting the engineering of Porsche, not just the look. We kind of said to ourselves, there were many things we said, but one that I remember is, what would Ferdinand have done if he knew what we know today? And that was a stimulus to pick the G Series, which had a number of challenges in technology at the time. Widowmaker, rear wheel, leaving the road. And we said, let's perfect this car. Let's make this car perfect, better than a modern Porsche. And of course, everyone often said you can't make it better than a modern Porsche. And we felt we could, because modern Porsches are beautiful machines, but Porsche are very clever. Every technology ad they've put in, they've simply made the car bigger. And in doing that, they lost the art and the beauty of the shape of the original car. So one of our challenges early was, how do we put all of the modern technology into a car that has the beauty and character of the original? And a lot of the engineering success and the engineering innovation that kind of Greg wrestled through at the time was, we don't have any space. We understood why Porsche made them bigger, because you need that space. So how do you build an exhaust system that actually fits, that meets emissions requirements, and you've got no space to build that into? How do you change the rear end suspension so you don't have a car that leaves the road, you have a car that sticks like glue, like a modern Porsche? And the big coups from an engineering point of view are really what we've created is a GT3 style car performance in a 70s look G Series. And that hasn't been done by anyone else in the world. It isn't a resto mod model. It's really a re-engineering model. And you have the best of modernity and the best of character and art and tradition.
What do you think Ferdinand would think of it?
I actually think about that quite a lot. And I think he was extremely pragmatic, very engineering driven. I think he would look at it and say, why did they make the car bigger and lose my character? Why didn't they just do what Greg and I have done in the car and keep it like this?
As we look at the ZB, it reeks of Stuttgart, Modena, probably a bit of California in there as well. You and Greg must be pretty chuffed, and you should be, that you've created this thing here in Melbourne, little old Australia.
Yeah, well, Melbourne, I'd like to think Melbourne, even though we're not sort of Italy or Germany, I think the car culture in Melbourne is probably amongst the strongest in the world. And you're growing up in that certainly helped, but part of the passion is not just to do something in your backyard. I think from my point of view, this is a country that performs best in the world in sports, best in the world in medical advancement, best in the world at innovative engineering. Australia, you may not know, invented the first 2 tanks in the world. So we've invented and done so many things in this country. And look, I love Lamborghinis, I love Ferraris, I love Koenigseggs, I love all sorts of exotic overseas cars. But there's a little bit of passion in me, perhaps Australian arrogance, that says, why can't we build something ourselves and sell it to the world? And the fact that we haven't in an area that we've done so well was an annoyance. And often I used to complain, to myself about the government needs to do more, we need to be smarter, we need to be more marketing focused in selling wheat or in selling all of our resources, and we're not. So the opportunity to do something that has a global agenda as opposed to a local interest was just irresistible.
So that's the why. Well, we're about to head to the workshop, and believe you me, that's when it gets real serious.